3 days after marrying Derek, he was invited to perform a surgical procedure abroad. As a dutiful wife, I focused on managing the Derek family's businesses. Late one night, I received a deeply intimate video of Derek with his adopted sister. Before anyone from the Derek family could provide an explanation, the video spread like wildfire online. The adopted sister faced relentless cyberbullying, her self-esteem shattered. Unable to cope, she took her own life by jumping from a building. Derek was convinced that I had leaked the video. Fueled by anger, he targeted the Gideon family's enterprises, ultimately driving them to bankruptcy. My elder brother was sent to prison on false charges orchestrated by Derek. My father suffered a fatal heart attack from the stress, and my unborn child was forcibly removed from my womb before its time. Without even a chance to see my baby, I was dragged to the rooftop of the Gideon family's now defunct company, where Derek held me and jumped with me, shouting venomously that I should go to hell to atone for his adopted sister's death. When I opened my eyes again, I realized both Derek and I had been reborn. Will the bride and groom exchange their vows with a kiss? The voice of the MC snapped me out of my thoughts. I glanced down at my attire. A pristine white wedding gown, not the blood-stained surgical attire I had worn in my previous life. My heart raced. I had returned to the day of my wedding to Derek. Instinctively, I wanted to call off the engagement. But Derek spoke first. "I want to annul the engagement with Alyssa," he declared. The room, filled with laughter and joy just moments earlier, fell deathly silent. Derek's gaze burned with hatred as he stared at me, his eyes brimming with anger. He exuded an aura of cold fury. Removing his wedding ring, he hurled it onto the ground before storming off the stage. In that moment, I understood. Derek had also been reborn. Downstairs, my father, infuriated, stood up and demanded, "Derek, are you seriously calling off the engagement?" My elder brother clenched his fists and tried to charge at Derek, but was restrained by the security team. "You want to break things off with my sister? Have you forgotten how hard you pursued her in the first place?" he shouted. I stood motionless on the stage, watching the chaos unfold. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. Not because Derek had rejected me, but because I could see my father and brother alive and well. My father hadn't been pushed to his death by Derek's cruelty, and my elder brother wasn't sitting in prison. Amid the stunned and puzzled stares of the guests, Derek strode toward the exit. He didn't stop until his parents blocked his way. "Derek, what are you doing? Go back and apologize to the Gideon family and Alyssa," his father demanded angrily. "Finish the wedding, and we'll deal with this later." Shaking off his father's grip, Derek's expression was resolute. "Dad, Mom, I'm in love with someone else. I don't love Alyssa," he said firmly. His mother covered her mouth in disbelief. "What are you saying, Derek? You were the one who proposed to Alyssa, swearing you'd spend your life with her." Indeed, it was Derek who had initiated the proposal. I remembered the first time I saw him at my 18th birthday party. He wore a sleek black suit, his upright posture and striking appearance making him stand out from the crowd. His neatly styled hair and cool demeanor gave him an air of pride that seemed almost magnetic. I noticed him immediately, captivated by his presence. There was something about him that drew me closer, making my heart race. I'd never felt that way about anyone before. As the center of attention at my party, I was too proud to ask him for a dance myself. Instead, I stood nearby, hoping to catch his eye. To my surprise, he noticed me. and extended an invitation to dance. From that night onward, Derek began a relentless pursuit. When I posted about wanting to see fireworks, he lit up the entire city with them, leaving countless people envious. He took me on trips to breathtaking natural landscapes, gave me gifts he'd designed and crafted himself, and even secretly presented me with the Derek family's ancestral sapphire ring, a family heirloom meant for their future daughter-in-law. At the time, his heartfelt proposal on one knee had made me fall for him completely. But in the end, Derek destroyed everything. He ruined my family, forcibly took my child, and dragged me to the rooftop of the Gideon Group's building, jumping with me while cursing me to eternal damnation. Only after that did I learn that he never truly loved me. Mom, Dad, even if it means you disown me, I'm ending my engagement with Alyssa, Derek said loudly, pulling me back to the present. Ignoring his parents' furious protests, he turned and walked away from the wedding. The guests murmured among themselves, confused and shocked by Derek's sudden decision. What could the Gideon family's daughter have done to deserve this? Someone whispered. The man must have had a good reason to humiliate her like that. Another muttered. The snickers and gossip swirled around the room. My father looked ready to confront Derek, but I stepped in to stop him. I agree to break off the engagement with Derek, I declared. At the same time, let's clarify the business contracts between our families. Projects that can't be dissolved should be settled with equivalent compensation. After that, there will be no further collaboration between the Gideon and Derek families. My words shocked everyone. My elder brother gripped my hand tightly, thinking I was speaking out of anger. Don't say things you'll regret, Alyssa, he urged. Brother, I'm not angry, I said calmly, a determined smile on my face. I don't love Derek, and I don't want to marry him. Since childhood, once I made up my mind, no one could change it. My father and brother, knowing this, reluctantly stepped back, silently supporting my decision. I turned to face the crowd, my sharp gaze silencing the whispers. I, Alyssa, have never wronged Derek or the Derek family. If anyone dares to spread slander about me, I will see you in court, I said coldly. The murmurs died down, and the onlookers quickly masked their smiles, realizing I wasn't joking. Derek's mother, clearly embarrassed, flushed and fidgeted nervously. His father, attempting to save face, forced a strained smile and said, Alyssa, it's Derek who is at fault here. He's not fortunate enough to marry you. Our families aren't just business allies. We've been close friends for years. There's no need to draw such clear lines between us, Derek's father said. Both my wife and I think highly of you and hope you'll consider becoming our adopted daughter. I smiled politely, but declined his kind offer. Removing the sapphire ring from my finger, I handed it back to him. Thank you, uncle and aunt, for your affection. But the love I receive from my own parents and elder brother is more than enough for me, I replied. With that, I left the venue with my father and elder brother. News of Derek jilting me spread quickly within our social circles, and I became the center of ridicule. People avoided mentioning the Derek family around me, cautious not to stir up unpleasant memories. Meanwhile, my father and elder brother were livid, furious at how I had been humiliated. At home, my adopted sister Mira chimed in. Sister, don't let it get to you. It's not your fault that Derek ended the engagement. He's young and proud. It's normal for him not to want to lose his freedom for anyone, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I turned to look at Mira, noticing the subtle pride and mockery in her expression. Miera was the daughter of our family's chauffeur. When she was 12, a rival of the Gideon family orchestrated a car accident. The driver had turned the car to shield my father in the back seat, sacrificing himself. Gravely injured, he later passed away. To repay his heroic act, my father adopted Mira. He treated her as his own daughter, providing her with the best education and resources, transforming her into a refined young lady. Ignoring her taunts, I turned to my father. "Dad, I'd like to join the company and learn the business," I said. Surprised but pleased, my father put down his coffee cup. "Good, you finally decided to help," he exclaimed, nodding enthusiastically. In my past life, Derek had ruined our company. Determined to prevent history from repeating itself, I warned my father about potential pitfalls. "Dad, the company's projects should be thoroughly reviewed, and the accounts must be rechecked to avoid any mistakes," I advised. I immersed myself in learning the ropes at the company. One evening, as I left work, I noticed luxury cars parked outside, along with flower petals arranged on the ground to spell out, "Mira, marry me." Derek stood nearby, dressed in a crisp white suit, holding a bouquet of pink roses. Leaning against a luxury car, he radiated confidence and charm. When he spotted Mira, his expression softened into a loving smile. He approached her, knelt on one knee, and presented the bouquet, revealing a sparkling diamond ring nestled among the flowers. Mira gasped in surprise, her hands covering her mouth. Her cheeks flushed, and tears of joy glistened in her eyes. "Mira, I can't deny my feelings any longer. You're the one I truly love. Please marry me. I promise to take care of you for the rest of our lives and never let any harm come your way," Derek said earnestly. He wasn't just proposing. He was also atoning for his failure to save her in our previous life. The air seemed filled with romance, and the two of them looked like a fairy tale couple. Passers-by watched enviously, taking photos and videos. Some employees from the company recognized them. "Isn't that Derek? And the Gideon family's adopted daughter?" someone whispered. So Derek broke off his engagement with the eldest daughter to be with the adopted one, another murmured. Their gossip reached my ears, but I remained composed, determined not to let Derek's antics affect me. Mira, however, glanced at me. Her voice wavered with false guilt as she said, "Sister, what should I do if you leave? After all, Derek was engaged to you before. I'd never dare to take your man." With just one sentence, she pushed me into the spotlight, making me the center of attention once more. "I was blind in the past," Derek interjected, his bloodshot eyes glaring at me. "I only agreed to marry Alyssa because she tricked me. She's the most devious woman I've ever met." "Derek, stop," Mira said softly, pretending to be confused. "I don't understand why you're saying such things." The bystanders exchanged knowing looks, convinced that I would let jealousy drive me to seek revenge against my former fiancé and adopted sister. At that moment, my elder brother arrived to pick me up and overheard Derek's accusations. Infuriated, he stormed over and kicked Derek. "Shut up! How dare you insult my sister?" I quickly intervened. "Brother, don't fight," I urged, stopping him. Thinking I was trying to defend Derek, my brother began to protest, but I silenced him by raising my hand and slapping Derek hard across the face. The impact sent him stumbling, and the bouquet fell to the ground, scattering petals and the diamond ring. "Derek, I don't love you. I've never done anything to harm you. Calling me vile without evidence is slander, and I'll sue you for it." I said coldly. Derek gritted his teeth, his voice low. You'll interfere because Mira is your sister. You won't let her marry me. Looking down at him in disdain, I replied, Who you love is none of my business. Taking my brother's hand, I walked away. In the car, I stared silently out the window. My brother, assuming I was upset, tried to console me. Derek is trash. I'll find someone better for you, he said. Shaking my head, I declined. Brother, protecting you and Dad is what matters most. Derek is just a pathetic man obsessed with love affairs. 2 days later, Derek came to our house to propose to Mira in person. My father, arms crossed, glared coldly at him and Mira. How dare you show up here again, Derek? He snapped. Mr. Gideon, the person I truly love is Mira. Pursuing Alyssa was a mistake. Please give us your blessing, Derek said calmly, holding Mira's hand tightly. Mira added, her tone resolute. Father, you've always treated me as your daughter. Now that I've found the man I want to spend my life with, I hope you'll support us. Faced with their determination, my father sighed heavily. Once you marry into the Derek family, you'll no longer be part of ours. Are you sure about this? Thank you, Father, for your blessing, Mira said, bowing deeply before heading to her room to pack. Before leaving, Derek and Mira knocked on my door to say goodbye. Mira, clinging to Derek's arm, said sweetly, Sister, even after I marry into the Derek family, you'll always be my sister. I'll visit often. As she leaned affectionately against Derek, it was clear she saw her marriage into the powerful Derek family as a step toward greatness. But no matter how high she climbed, she could never truly become a phoenix. She was nothing more than a sparrow, Alyssa. Don't let this make you feel inadequate. It's not that you're lacking in any way. I simply love Mira more, Derek said softly. Lowering his head to press a kiss on Mira's forehead, his eyes filled with tender affection. She's my salvation. The sight of their intimacy made me feel nauseous. I called for the maid. Aunt Zhang. Aunt Zhang. Remove all of their belongings from this house. Don't keep anything that doesn't belong to the Derek family. It's just taking up space. Also, renovate the adjacent room to cleanse this place of bad luck. Aunt Zhang nodded immediately and ordered the staff to clear out their things. Derek and Mira were promptly thrown out as well. I buried myself in work, dedicating all my energy to expanding the Gideon family business. My goal was to build our company into a powerhouse that the Derek family couldn't touch. Just 2 months later, however, tragedy struck Derek's mother. She suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage and was rushed to the emergency room. Although her life was saved after an intense battle, she was left paralyzed on one side and required constant care. In my previous life, Derek's mother had fallen into despair, contemplating suicide. To prevent her from doing anything drastic, I personally cared for her. I stayed by her side day and night, helping her with rehabilitation exercises and offering emotional support. Just as her condition started to improve, Mira jumped from a building and Derek threw me off the rooftop. In this life, 1 week after Derek's mother was hospitalized, her condition deteriorated rapidly. On her deathbed, she expressed a wish to see me one last time. Despite my reservations, I couldn't ignore the lingering emotions from my previous life and went to the hospital to see her. She lay pale and frail on the bed, her breathing labored. When she saw me, her dim eyes brightened slightly. She parted her lips as if trying to speak. Taking her hand, which still had an IV needle in it. I felt a pang of sorrow. Tears welled in my eyes as I unconsciously called out, "Mom, I'm here." Her expression shifted in surprise, and a tear rolled down her cheek. Summoning the last of her strength, she gripped my hand tightly, her frail fingers squeezing until it hurt. "Good girl. I'm so glad you came to see me," she said faintly. "I've always seen you as my daughter. Will you be my adopted child? I want you to have half of the shares in my name. You deserve it." Her breathing grew heavier as she looked at me with love and reluctance. At that moment, the door burst open. Mira, who had been eavesdropping outside, stormed in, her face twisted in anger. "Mom, I'm your daughter-in-law. She's just an outsider. How could you give her the shares?" she shouted. Rushing to the bedside, Mira shoved me aside and placed herself between Derek's mother and me. "You shameless woman, calling my mother-in-law Mom. Who do you think you are?" Mira sneered, glaring at me. "You're jealous because I married into the Derek family, and now you're trying to cheat her out of her money. Don't you have any shame?" Derek's mother struggled to lift her hand, trying to touch Mira's arm to quiet her. I looked at Mira coldly. "Auntie isn't well. I won't argue with you now. We'll deal with this later," I said sharply. But Mira, ignoring her mother-in-law's condition, continued her tirade. "You all treat me like an outsider. You bully me while favoring her," she shouted. Derek's mother opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, her breath faltered. The monitor emitted a sharp beep, signaling her passing. The electrocardiogram on the screen flatlined, silencing Mira mid-sentence. I immediately pressed the call button for the medical team. Mira stepped back, mumbling to herself. "It wasn't me. It wasn't me." Outside the ward, Derek and his father anxiously awaited updates. As the doctors entered, Mira rushed to Derek, throwing herself into his arms. "Brother Derek, Alyssa made Mum so angry she passed away." Derek's eyes turned bloodshot. Losing all reason, he roared, "I knew you had bad intentions toward my mum. You finally revealed your true nature. You killed her. I'll make you pay for this." He raised his hand to strike me, but I dodged and slapped him hard across the face. "You dare hit me again," Derek growled, his voice trembling with rage. "You deserved it," I replied coldly. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a recording device and handed it to Derek's father. "Uncle, the entire incident has been recorded. Listen to it at your convenience." With that, I turned and left. Behind me, Mira's shrill voice echoed in the hallway as she fought to defend herself. "I didn't say that. She's lying." Derek's father, enraged by the recording, decided to drive Mira out of the family. Derek, unwilling to break off his engagement with Mira, was also expelled. Under immense stress, Derek had a heated argument with a patient's family at the hospital and was suspended from work. Meanwhile, I worked tirelessly and secured the position of junior vice president in the company. Derek's father transferred half of his late wife's shares to me and even offered me a room in the Derek family home, treating me as his adopted daughter. Mira barged into my office one day, seething with anger. "Alyssa, what do I have to do to make you leave me alone?" she demanded. Glancing at her briefly, I returned to reviewing documents. "You're too late," I replied indifferently. Mira, no longer a member of either the Derek or Gideon families, vented her frustrations. "You've always overshadowed me. You were born with privilege, always competing with me and making me feel inferior. I've lived in your shadow my entire life. I finally looked up, letting out a dry laugh. Ungrateful as always. The Gideon family treated you like a daughter, giving you the best resources and education. What more could you possibly want? Ignoring Mira's continued outburst, I instructed the security guards to escort her out. Later that evening, in a private dining room, laughter filled the air. Derek, it's impressive that you're trying to start your own company after being a surgeon. If you can drink this glass of liquor without spilling a drop, I'll consider working with you, a man teased. Derek, once a renowned surgeon, now wore a suit instead of his white coat. His former arrogance had been replaced by a humble demeanor. With a forced smile, he lifted the glass. But as he steadied his hand, the man bumped into him intentionally, causing the liquor to spill down Derek's chin, soaking his clothes and leaving him humiliated. I'm sorry, Derek, my hand slipped, Arlo chuckled. And the others joined in with mocking laughter. Pour yourself another glass, Derek, and give it another try. Derek stood stiffly by the round table, clearly out of place. He was nothing more than a source of amusement for the group. A clown they had no intention of working with seriously. Determined to prove himself, he reached for the glass again, his grip firm. As he lifted it, he caught sight of me standing outside the private room. His eyes betrayed his nerves, and his trembling hand spilled half the liquor. Arlo seized the moment to ridicule him further. A doctor who can't even hold a glass steady. How can anyone trust him with a scalpel? Frustrated, Derek slammed the glass down on the table with such force that it shattered, cutting his hand. Blood dripped from the wound, bright and vivid. Be careful of doctors with shaky hands. They might end up cutting in the wrong place, Arlo sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Derek's bloodshot eyes glared with fury, exuding the same menacing aura he had the day he killed me. Those who've taken a life carry a terrifying presence that makes others instinctively uneasy. Unable to stay any longer, he stormed out of the room. I stepped in after him and successfully negotiated a deal for the new project with Arlo's company. Outside the restaurant, Derek appeared from the shadows and grabbed my arm, dragging me under a nearby tree. He was leaning unsteadily, his cheeks flushed, and the strong stench of alcohol wafted from him. Alyssa, why didn't you stop me when I ended the engagement? Have you fallen in love with someone else? His voice was slurred, but insistent. Turning my head away in disgust, I covered my nose and mouth. You said you didn't love me. I'm not going to chase after you either, I replied coldly. Refusing to let go, Derek grasped my chin with his blood-streaked hand. The warmth of his touch combined with the sticky sensation of blood smeared across my face was revolting. The metallic tang mixed with the stench of alcohol made me want to retch. Let me go, I said, shoving against his chest. But instead of releasing me, Derek suddenly wrapped his arms around me. His voice was a low murmur, almost to himself. Why didn't you ask me to stay? If you had, Before he could finish, Mira appeared, rushing over in anger. She pried Derek away from me, her expression livid. You're insatiable. How dare you seduce your sister's man, you shameless homewrecker. Wiping the blood off my face with disgust, I stared at Mira, nausea twisting in my gut. He's trash I don't want, but you treat him like treasure, I said with a bitter laugh. Derek's face was a mix of emotions as he stared at me, his expression unreadable. You were the one jilted. Derek loves me, Mira retorted, her voice trembling with fury. In the past, Derek had been utterly devoted to Mira. This time I thought they could have each other. Let them stay together and stop troubling others. Impatiently, Derek pushed Mira away as she clung to him. "I told you to stay home and not follow me," he snapped. "Derek, I was worried about you," Mira said tearfully. "You've done stupid things before, and I was the one who saved you. I'm scared. I don't want to lose you." 5 years ago, Derek had botched a surgery, consumed by guilt and unable to face himself. He avoided picking up a scalpel and even attempted to end his life. His hand trembled so much that he couldn't perform basic tasks. Mira had found him during that time and called an ambulance, saving his life. In the hospital, I stayed by his side day and night, helping him work through his pain. Thankfully, the injury hadn't damaged his tendons or arteries, and Derek eventually returned to performing surgeries. Mira, however, was absent during his recovery, yet he fell in love with her. Reflecting on this, I smirked bitterly. So all my efforts were worth less than one phone call. Mira's gaze fell on Derek's hand, the jagged scar now covered in blood. "What happened to your hand?" "Did she do this?" she accused, pointing at me. Frowning, I replied, irritated by her baseless accusations. "Stop blaming me for everything. You're disgusting." The urge to stay near them any longer vanished. Feeling suffocated, I turned and left, getting into my car. Over the next 6 months, I secured several major projects. During a celebratory dinner, I received a familiar video. My hands trembled as I opened it. The footage identical to what I had seen in my past life. The dimly lit video showed 2 figures entangled on a bed. The woman was Mira, but the man wasn't Derek. It was Jeremy. Jeremy, a mixed-race man with striking features, carried an irresistible charm. His deep eyes and cheerful smile made him popular with women, and Mira had been one of his admirers. In my past life, I had deleted the video and told no one. Still, it was uploaded online, and Mira became the target of vicious cyberbullying. She couldn't handle the relentless insults and ended her life. This time, I decided to act differently. Using my connections, I investigated the truth. Derek had blamed me for Mira's death, unleashing his wrath on me and my family. The Gideon Company fell into chaos. My father suffered a fatal heart attack, and my brother was imprisoned. Derek took over our company and gloated to my father, who died in despair. Derek even took my unborn child from me before throwing me off a building. Determined not to let history repeat itself, I leaked the video to an online editor. With the Gideon family now powerful, no one dared retaliate. The video quickly went viral, tarnishing the Derek family's reputation. Derek was disowned by his family and reduced to a laughingstock as he humiliated himself to maintain Mira's lifestyle. Derek eventually stormed into the room where Mira was hiding under a blanket. Dragging her out, he screamed, "Haven't I treated you well? And yet, you're having an affair." Terrified by Derek's rage, Mira cried and pleaded, "Let me explain. The videos are fake. It's Alyssa trying to frame me." Derek, unmoved, spat. "You were unfaithful even before we married, and you've continued since. You're nothing but a cheater. I was blind to ever think you deserved me." Kicking Mira in the stomach, he coldly ended their engagement. Though Derek was later forgiven by his father and allowed back into the family, the scandal spread through upper-class circles, becoming a popular topic of gossip. One evening, Derek stopped my car as I was leaving work. For a moment, I thought he was going to threaten me over Mira again. But instead he apologized. "Alyssa, I'm sorry," he said, his voice trembling. "I know now that you're the one I love. Let's get back together. I'll marry you and only love you." I sneered, started the car, and drove off without sparing him a glance. "Where's that dog barking? It's so annoying," I muttered to myself, leaving Derek behind. I was still furious, chasing after Derek's car, yelling apologies over and over. It wasn't until I accelerated and knocked him down, causing him to fall, that he finally snapped out of it. By now, I had seen Derek for who he truly was. A self-absorbed, manipulative man with no genuine affection for anyone. He was nothing more than a narcissist, lost in his own delusions. Instead of going home, Derek stormed into the bar where Jeremy was drinking, dragged him out of his seat, and started a brutal fight. The two of them brawled violently, leaving both of them bloodied. A video of their altercation quickly spread online, with viewers labeling them as rivals fighting over Mira. People called her a mistress, revealing how she seduced Derek, stole her sister's fiancé, and destroyed lives. At home, Gideon gleefully showed me the video comments. "Sister, Mira's really ruined herself this time. Look, it's even out that she had another man," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "She seems so proper under our noses. Who knew she was juggling so many men?" I scrolled through the posts online, feeling neither sadness nor pity as I had in my past life. Instead, there was only a cold satisfaction. Things were playing out exactly as they had before, though I still couldn't figure out who leaked the video. Dismissing my brother with a vague response, I messaged a private investigator asking him to uncover the source. Meanwhile, Mietra approached Derek, confessing her mistakes and begging for forgiveness. She pleaded to return to the Derek family. But Derek coldly rejected her, declaring that his family wouldn't tolerate a daughter-in-law with her scandalous past. Desperate, Mira returned to the Gideon family, kneeling at our doorstep to beg for forgiveness. "Father, please let me stay. Let me be your daughter again," she cried, blood streaming from her forehead as she kowtowed repeatedly. My father stood at the door, watching her from a distance. "I raised you and treated you like my own, but you've brought nothing but disgrace to this family," he said firmly. Mira had been pampered for a decade and was now utterly lost without her privileges, unable to fend for herself. With a wave of his hand, my father signaled the security guards to remove her. "I only have one daughter, and that's Alyssa," he declared. Gideon wrapped an arm around me and grinned mischievously. "And I only have one sister. If the sky falls, I'll hold it up for you." My heart swelled with emotion, and tears of gratitude slipped down my cheeks. In this new life, my father and brother were just as loving and protective as ever. I patted my chest, smiling through my tears. "Don't worry, brother. This time, I'll hold it up with you." This time, Mira's suicide didn't go unnoticed. Instead, she staged a live broadcast, crying as she recounted her story in a desperate bid for sympathy. However, the live comments were ruthless, filled with insults and criticism. "You don't know the truth," she cried. "After being adopted by the Gideon family, I was bullied by Alyssa. Derek loved me, but she wanted to take him too. I'm not a mistress. Derek broke off his engagement with her because he loved me. She spread lies and ruined my life." Mira displayed a photo of Derek hugging me, a picture she had secretly taken outside the restaurant when Derek, drunk, had embraced me. "Alyssa, I hate you," she screamed, leaving these words as her last before stepping off the edge of the building. Her live broadcast room exploded, the comments scrolling in chaos before the video was taken down. But the footage of her final moments spread rapidly, and people online began blaming me for driving her to her death. I held a press conference, speaking live to clear my name. Derek ended our engagement at the wedding and proposed to Mira the next day. She accepted and cut ties with the Gideon family to marry into the Derek family. She called me a mistress and accused me of stealing her man, spreading baseless rumors and lies. Mira weaponized her death to frame me. But just because someone speaks before they die doesn't make their words true. I didn't force her to jump, and her motives remain her own. Public sentiment began shifting, and Derek eventually stepped forward with a confession. He admitted to being indecisive between Mira and me, acknowledging his mistakes. He also revealed the truth. Mira had been blackmailed by Jeremy, who was furious after their video spread online, damaging his reputation. Jeremy had threatened Mira, demanding she delete the footage or face dire consequences. Afraid and with nowhere to turn, rejected by both the Gideon and Derek families, Mira leapt to her death, blaming me in her final moments to shift the spotlight. The private investigator I had hired also delivered his findings. The leaked video had come from Mira's ex-boyfriend, whom she had abandoned after accepting Derek's proposal. Out of spite, he hacked the hotel's surveillance footage and sent it to me. When I publicized the video, he panicked and went into hiding. I gave him two options through my lawyer: turn the evidence over to the police or work for me under my protection. Unsurprisingly, he chose the latter. Having a skilled hacker on my side ensured I could preemptively counter any threats to the Gideon family. My father organized a modest funeral for Mira, laying her to rest beside her biological father's grave. With the chapter closed, the Gideon family's business soared, becoming the top in the industry. Meanwhile, Jeremy and Derek were locked in a bitter feud. Jeremy retaliated against Derek's family, setting traps and bribing executives to sabotage him. Derek, lacking business acumen, was tricked into signing flawed contracts, while Jeremy's schemes flourished. Under mounting pressure, Derek's father expelled him from the company, urging him to return to medicine. But Derek's stress culminated in a surgical error that nearly cost a patient their life. Sued by the patient's family, Derek was barred from practicing medicine. Disgraced, he turned to alcohol, spending his days drunk and broken. One evening, I saw Derek slumped against a stone pillar outside my office. His clothes were disheveled, his body reeked, and his once proud demeanor had completely eroded. Staggering toward me, he slurred, "Alyssa, I've been waiting for you." The security guards blocked his path. "Get lost, drunk. You think you can just approach President Alyssa like this?" I waved them off, and Derek stopped at a distance. His gaunt face and sunken eyes barely resembled the man I once knew. "Alyssa," he rasped, "I was reborn. In the past life, I destroyed your family and killed you. But I didn't die. I came back. That's why I broke off the engagement. But I regret it now." He took a swig from his bottle, his body swaying. "I told people, but they thought I was mad. Am I crazy, Alyssa? You were reborn too, weren't you? You're punishing me, aren't you?" He stared at me, his laugh spiraling into a manic cackle. "I'm not insane. This isn't a dream." I said nothing, watching him quietly. Derek had created his own misery, and I had no intention of absolving him. He would live with his torment, unable to escape his past. As Gideon called my name, I turned toward him and my father, who were smiling and waving. Together, I walked toward the people who truly mattered, ready to protect and cherish them in this second chance at life.